Ferrari have turned a tiny clear piece on the halo into one of the biggest fights of the new season, and the reason the paddock is tense is simple. This may be a legal idea that nobody can stop in time. 2 races into 2026, Mercedes lead the championship on 98 points and Ferrari sit on 67, close enough that one smart upgrade can change how every Sunday begins. Lewis Hamilton has already taken his first Ferrari Grand Prix podium. Charles Leclerc is right there with him in the standings. And suddenly, this is not just a strange part on a red car. It is a pressure point, and nobody yet knows how far Ferrari can push it. That tension did not come from one rumor. It came from China, where Ferrari rolled out the clear halo winglets in full view, let Hamilton and Leclerc run them, then pulled them before the main qualifying fight. What no broadcast covered is this: Ferrari did not back away because the idea looked weak. They backed away because the idea looked dangerous in the best possible way. Leclerc has already admitted Ferrari still seem about 4 to 5 tenths short of Mercedes over one lap, so a part that cleans airflow, helps the rear of the car, and squeezes out even a small gain matters more than it looks from the outside. But here's the part that changes everything. Ferrari may not have stumbled onto a neat aero trick at all. They may have found a way to label it as something the rules already allow, which means the fight is no longer just about performance. It is about language, timing, and whether the FIA can close the door before the rest of the grid starts copying it. Mercedes, McLaren, Red Bull, Williams, Alpine, Haas, Racing Bulls, Audi, Aston Martin, and Cadillac are all watching the same question now. To understand why this tiny clear part has the whole paddock staring at Ferrari, you have to go back to exactly what happened in China. Ferrari showed their hand in Shanghai before most people understood what they were looking at. On Thursday, in the middle of a sprint weekend where every lap already mattered more, the SF-26 appeared with 2 small clear pieces mounted around the halo, and within hours the whispers started spreading through the pit lane. Rival engineers noticed it straight away because this was not a normal Ferrari update hidden deep inside the bodywork. It was sitting in plain sight, right where everyone could see it. That made the first mystery even sharper. If Ferrari were this confident, why did the team still look so careful? The answer started taking shape when the weekend moved from curiosity to risk. Hamilton and Leclerc both ran the device through the early running, and Ferrari got real track data instead of wind tunnel theory. That mattered because this was not some quiet test at the back of the field. Ferrari were already chasing a weekend that could shift momentum after Hamilton's podium push and Leclerc staying close in the fight. But nobody in that garage expected what came next. As questions around the part grew louder and protest talks started circling, Ferrari made the call to pull it before the main qualifying battle could turn into something much messier. That is what made China so important. Ferrari did not scrap the idea because it failed. Ferrari stepped back because the team understood the argument was about to move away from lap time and into legality. The real story was never about the lap time. It was about whether Ferrari had found a way to place a useful aero part in a zone where everyone else thought the rules had already slammed the door shut. Once that became clear, China stopped being just the place where the winglets appeared. It became the moment the whole fight shifted to one tiny line in the rulebook. Ferrari may have built a part that only works because it refuses to call itself what it really looks like. That is the trap sitting under this whole story. On the surface, those clear pieces on the halo look like tiny winglets, which is exactly why rival teams reacted so fast. But Ferrari may not be defending them as winglets at all. Ferrari may be defending them as a windscreen, and if that sounds absurd, that is exactly why the idea is so dangerous. The part itself is small. The argument behind it is not. One changes airflow, the other can change the whole fight. The FIA rule Ferrari may be leaning on is brutally narrow, but it is real. The regulations allow a transparent windscreen on the front face of the cockpit opening, as long as it stays within 30 millimeters in height, within 300 millimeters in width from the center line, and no more than 3 millimeters thick. That is what makes the material so important. If the piece is clear, if it sits in the right place, and if it stays inside those limits, Ferrari can argue that it belongs there. And that is where this story gets complicated, because now the debate stops being about shape alone. That is also why the paddock did not treat this like some harmless experiment. If Ferrari are right, then a zone most teams treated as closed off suddenly becomes usable again, and every aero group on the grid has to ask the same ugly question. Did Ferrari really find a legal opening, or did they find wording the FIA never expected anyone to push this far? Rival teams can complain all they want, but complaint is not the same as proof. The next battle is bigger than the part itself, because finding the right rule is one thing, getting a free pass is something else. Ferrari are not the first team to scare Formula 1 with a clever reading of the rules, and that is exactly why nobody in Maranello can relax yet. This sport has a long memory. Braun, Toyota, and Williams arrived in 2009 with the double diffuser, got it ruled legal in Australia. And suddenly Jenson Button had the kind of early edge that changed the whole season. Mercedes did it again with DAS in 2020, legal in the moment, gone for the next year. McLaren found the F-duct in 2010, and that survived long enough to force the rest of the grid into a scramble before the door closed. That is why Ferrari's clear halo idea sits in such an uncomfortable place. A part can be allowed today and still trigger a response that kills it tomorrow. Charlie Whiting said almost exactly that when Ferrari tried halo-mounted mirror winglets back in 2018. The team was allowed to finish the Barcelona weekend with the design, but the FIA moved to shut it down before Monaco because they believed the aero intent was too obvious. Ferrari learned from that blow. This time the argument looks tighter, the material choice looks smarter, and the legal ground looks harder to dismiss in one clean move. So the real danger for Ferrari is not only a protest, it is success. If the FIA lets this live even for a short stretch, rival teams start studying it, copying it, and stretching the idea right up to the limit until the governing body feels forced to step in. That is the pattern. First comes the innovation, then the panic, then the copy race, then the rewrite. Ferrari know that better than anyone, which is why the next question is not whether the part is clever. The next question is whether the airflow gain hiding behind it is big enough to make the whole fight worth it. Ferrari did not cause this much noise for a part that simply looked unusual. The clear pieces matter because they try to fix one of the messiest air zones on the whole car. The halo pillar sits right in front of the driver, the helmet sits right behind it, and that combination breaks the flow before it reaches the upper bodywork. Ferrari's idea was aimed at cleaning that air up around the helmet and cockpit, then sending it further back in a more useful shape. That is why the part looks small, but the reaction to it has been anything but small. The clever part is where the gain shows up. Ferrari officially described the update in China as something that returns a small aerodynamic load benefit, which sounds modest until you think about where that cleaner flow goes next. Better air in that area can help what reaches the engine cover and the rear of the car. And the race reported that Ferrari's goal was not just local cleanup, but a downstream gain that could add a bit more downforce overall. The part was also judged to be worth only a few hundredths, which tells you Ferrari were chasing efficiency, not a miracle. That is why rival teams paid attention straight away. A gain of a few hundredths sounds tiny until it sits on a front-running car that is already looking for every edge it can find against Mercedes, McLaren, and Red Bull. Ferrari are not trying to win the season with one clear strip on the halo. They are trying to stack one useful gain on top of another until the whole package starts leaning their way. Once you see it like that, the next question becomes impossible to ignore. Which teams can afford to copy this idea now, and which teams have bigger problems to solve first? Ferrari may have started the idea, but the next phase belongs to the whole grid. McLaren sit on 18 points, Haas on 17, Red Bull and Racing Bulls on 12, Alpine on 10, Audi and Williams on 2, while Cadillac and Aston Martin are still on 0. That spread matters because a part like this only becomes a real story when other teams decide whether it is worth chasing. Frontrunners will look at any gain and see opportunity. Teams with bigger gaps will look at the same piece and see a luxury. The question is no longer whether Ferrari found something clever. The question is who can afford to care right now. For some teams, the answer is brutal. Red Bull are not in a place to waste energy on distractions when Max Verstappen himself has said they are nowhere near the front at the moment. Aston Martin have a different problem entirely because their season has been wrecked by severe power unit vibration and they still have not finished a race. Audi are dealing with leadership shock after Jonathan Wheatley left with immediate effect before Suzuka, which means their focus is split before they even get to performance. The data tells a completely different story. Ferrari's rivals are not all choosing between good options. Some are just trying to survive the opening phase of 2026. That is what gives Ferrari a real window. Even if the Halo idea is small, the copy race may arrive slower than usual because too many teams are already trapped by other problems. Mercedes can study it from the top, McLaren can debate it from a distance, but several others are staring at issues far more urgent than one clear strip near the cockpit. And once development choices start splitting across the grid, the value of Ferrari's head start grows fast. A clever loophole becomes even more dangerous when half the field is too busy to answer it. That is where this story narrows again, because the teams feeling that pressure most directly are the ones with a title fight already taking shape inside their own garages. Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc are separated by just 1 point, but that is not the number putting pressure on Ferrari right now. The number that hurts is up front, because George Russell leads the championship on 51. Kimi Antonelli is right behind on 47. Leclerc sits on 34 and Hamilton on 33. That gap turns every small Ferrari gain into something much bigger than a design story. This is no longer about whether the Halo idea looks clever in the paddock. It is about whether Ferrari can stop Mercedes from turning early control into something that becomes far harder to drag back later. Hamilton has already explained why this car feels different. He said the SF26 suits him better because Ferrari actually built this one with his feedback in mind, unlike last year when he arrived too late to shape the package in a serious way. Leclerc has been just as clear from the other side of the garage. He believes Ferrari are still 4 or 5 tenths short of Mercedes when those cars get into clean air and show their real pace. That is the tension inside this fight. Ferrari have made progress, but progress is not the same thing as control. That is why this section of the story lands so hard on both drivers. Hamilton needs these upgrades to turn comfort into victories. Because feeling better in the car means nothing if Mercedes keep disappearing on Saturdays and Sundays. Leclerc needs them because he knows Ferrari can scrap with the silver arrows early, but he also knows that once free air opens up, the advantage still swings away. So the Halo fight is not some side plot running above their heads. It sits right in the middle of Ferrari's first real title test, and what comes next decides whether this is a clever start or the moment Ferrari changed the whole season. Ferrari may not need this Halo idea to survive forever for it to matter. They may only need it to live long enough to change the way the whole grid thinks. Suzuka is the first real checkpoint because that is where every rival will be looking for one thing: whether Ferrari bring the concept back, push it further, or force the FIA into a firmer public position. And if that happens, the story stops being about one unusual part on one car. It becomes a test of who reads a new rule set faster, who reacts faster, and who understands that the first months of a regulation cycle can shape the whole year. That is why Ferrari already holds something valuable even before anyone talks about a final legal victory. They have forced every serious aero department to go back through the rulebook and ask whether a dead zone on the car was never truly dead at all. Some teams will chase the same idea, some will wait, and some will hope the FIA steps in before they have to spend the time. But even that hesitation helps Ferrari in a season where development choices are pulling teams in different directions. The side that asks the right question first can steal weeks that nobody ever gets back. And that is why this fight lands with more weight than the part itself. If the FIA tightened the wording later, Ferrari still banked the advantage of being first. If the concept stays alive, then the rest of the grid have just been handed a new problem in the middle of an already unstable season. Either way, Ferrari have already done the hardest part. They made the paddock doubt what it thought it understood. And once that doubt gets inside Formula One, the next battle is never about copying the part. It is about proving who saw the future first.